Right?
Okay, hello and welcome to the weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do pretty much every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Central Time, and it runs for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. So before we hop into it real quick, I just wanted to touch on something that Angie and I had touched on yesterday in the live stream that we did. And it was about basically kind of cultivating or getting in tune with the ability to discern the difference between dangerous and safe. And we had a gal who was asking some questions about that. She was really struggling with really getting grounded in her reality, which I think that's something that all of us have really struggled with when you're overcoming PTSD and you're trying to move forward and you're trying to figure out who can I trust and how do I keep myself safe. And anyways, so we left the live stream and I just kept thinking about that question, and I kept thinking about that gal and trying to figure out a better way to kind of phrase that, to phrase my answer, because I think it really trips a lot of people up. And anyways, so I came up with the concept of backing up a step. So you don't even need to figure out you don't even need to discern the difference between dangerous and safe, but back it up to uncomfortable and comfortable. So if you're in a situation, and here's the other thing too. So part of the conversation yesterday was she was saying, well, how can you really tell if they're a toxic person? And what if you're wrong? What if they're like this great person, and because we're hypervigilant, we're somehow missing out on a wonderful person? And if you make the shift to comfortable and versus uncomfortable, and you're taking action in life based off of things that make you comfortable, then it's not about them. We don't need to figure out if they're toxic, if they're a narcissist, if they're a sociopath, if they're manipulative, if they have bad intentions. None of that matters. What matters is if the situation is not comfortable for you, it's okay to leave. You don't need to wait for concrete proof that that person is indeed problematic. If we're waiting for concrete proof, then we're waiting too long. So, and then also on this note, I came across this video on YouTube about seriously 20 minutes ago from this gal who had gone to a job interview. And this was something I was not aware of. And so I think this is worth passing along. She went to a job interview. She found this place through Indeed.com. So it's a legitimate job sourcing website. The job interview ended up being in a building that was really sketchy. It had tinted windows. It looked like an abandoned strip mall. And nothing about it was professional. Nothing about it added up. And long story short, she ended up leaving. She just told the guy she had a bad feeling. She said that she felt like she was going to die, like she was in serious danger. And so she told the interviewer, she made up an excuse because she kind of thought, I don't want to confront him about this. I need to be smart and just make it seem like it's my issue, and I just need to get out of here. And so she had told the guy that she was feeling really nauseated, and so that she just needed to leave, that she'd call him, she'd reschedule, all of that. And she got in her car and immediately called her husband and was just shaking. She drove for a few blocks and then just pulled over. And so she was reviewing all of the different things that were sketchy about it. And what's interesting and terrifying about this is I did not realize that human sex trafficking was as prominent as it is. And so she was talking about how, or other people had been telling her, yes, it's very common for these job sites, or I should say, Craigslist is one of the top places that human sex traffickers go through to find people. And posting for jobs is one way that they do it. Dating is another. But so if you're looking for a job and it's sketchy, they're offering you a position. Her position was just teaching, like being a tutor for students. But if you get any positions that want you to be a nanny, they want you to house sit, they want you to go overseas, they want you to meet them at a sketchy place, or They want you to meet them at a house. Even if the house is really nice, they could just be renting it for the day. You don't know. So these kinds of things, it can feel like we're being hypervigilant and paranoid, but in this day and age, you really have to just err on the side of caution, letting people know where you're going to be. This is the address. I'm going for a job interview. I plan on being out of there within the hour. If I don't call you, call me or call the police if I don't answer. Just letting people know. This is really part of just situational awareness, and I would say self-care in this day and age. So yeah, and Camilla's saying there are 70,000 human trafficking victims in Texas, and that doesn't include people under 18. Everyone needs to be educated on this topic. People need to learn how to spot the signs. Yes, absolutely. And it can be, she also says, search, be the one human trafficking to learn about the signs. Yes. And what was interesting too that I learned was that with human trafficking, it doesn't matter your age or your gender. So don't, I had kind of always thought, well, I'm over 40, who's gonna want to nab me? But it's any age, any gender. So guys, and I think this is probably a bigger thing for men, because I think a lot of guys, they're not taught this kind of stuff. So just situational awareness. If something feels off, it's probably off. Err on the side of caution. You don't need to wait for things to continue to get sketchy or to be put in danger before you actually leave. So I thought that I would pass that along. Okay. Oh gosh, that's a great question. Well, actually, let me comment on this. Slavic Princess says, yes, every aspect of narcissistic abuse really suppresses our intuition. Yes, and that is probably the number one thing that it's really important that we get back in tune with. And that's one of the reasons I really stress just err on the side of caution. Even if you're finding yourself waffling, this feels off, but I'm not really sure if it's off. Is it me? Is it them? I'm kind of confused. I don't know. This is confusing. This is uncomfortable. I don't know. I don't want to make too big of a deal out of things. Always err on the side of caution. Get some distance between you and whatever situation that you're in. Legitimate situations don't come with that degree of discomfort and confusion. In a nutshell, they don't. So, yeah, that's a big thing. Learning how to keep ourselves safe and realizing that there's a lot of the people in the world is a mixed bag, and you just don't know who's out there and what their intentions are. And we can't assume that everybody out there is full of good intentions. So, okay. So Paisley says, my significant other suddenly stopped talking to me. Our taxes aren't done, car repairs, etc. He calls me paranoid all the time. I can't tell if this is a danger sign or just your everyday nonsense. Well, I think that'll depend on the pattern that you've had with him. If you both are still in a relationship and this is pretty common for him to just up and disappear, then I guess it would be everyday nonsense. If he's upped and disappeared out of the blue, I guess I would just try to take charge and get your taxes done as best you can, or at least let him know and say, I really want to have the taxes done by, I don't know, the last day of February or March 1st. And if I don't hear back from you, I'm just going to go ahead and do them and submit them. And then car repair stuff, I would go handle it the best you can. But yes, that's really frustrating. Let's see. The Temeline says, can you touch a little bit on friends who are narcissistic and how to wean them off without causing retaliation, if even possible? If you're trying to break ties with problematic people, it can help, and you're trying to do it in a way that's as kind of non-confrontational as possible. Staying really busy is one way to do it. And really, if letting their calls go to voicemail, not texting them back right away, continuing to put distance between you and them, letting them know if you end up running into them or if they call that you're just super busy, that you're, you've got all this other stuff going on. And then hopefully over time, they'll just end up kind of making some new friends and they'll just leave you alone. So that it's really it's difficult. It's difficult to even end a friendship that's not toxic. So, yeah, it's a challenge. Okay, let's see. Claudia says, why do my posts disappear? Yesterday I posed a question, now it's gone. It never got addressed. Please advise. Thank you. If you're talking about you posted a question in the chat starts, as far as I know, it starts completely brand new every single live stream. So if you could repost your question, I will answer it. So, and I also wanted to just acknowledge this too. I am going to be making a concerted effort from here on out to be a lot more concise with my answers. The reason I hadn't been in the past is because I was trying to cover all of the bases for new people coming on here. And I've just gotten a lot of feedback that it's too much and they'd rather go through more questions than have such a lengthy answer. So I apologize if my really long answers were not wanted. So be making more of an effort to do something different tonight. Okay, let's see. Okay, Slavic Princess says, Dana, I recently befriended a very nice guy who, although seemed to gain an insane amount of insight on the dynamics of narcissistic abuse, he invalidated me while I described a very painful epiphany. That I had about my father who was psychopathic. The guy just said, well, hey, he's your dad. So these, I think in part, people who have never experienced manipulative or abusive people in general, let alone as a parent, cannot relate. And they're operating from that mindset of, well, but they're your parents, or nobody's perfect, or you only get one mom, or you only get one dad. That kind of a mindset, which is incredibly invalidating. I kind of like to give them the benefit of the doubt of they don't know what they're saying, because they don't. They just can't even begin to relate. However, I think it's worth addressing opening up to people and the level that we're opening up to them and the speed that we're opening up to them. So this kind of stuff of, hey, my really delicate, intensely emotional stuff that if somebody doesn't handle it well, that's going to really throw you for a loop or potentially ruin a friendship or end a friendship or any of this kind of stuff. I would wait to know that person for months before I would even begin to get into all of that. So, and then along the way, kind of gauging how, if they are emotionally safe. It takes time to know if a person's emotionally safe. And in situations like that, because, we all have our own triggers, and other people, like I said, other people just don't understand this kind of stuff if they haven't lived it. So I would kind of I would just anticipate that you're going to hear that of, oh, well, it's your father and, you should really make amends and blah, blah, blah. So coming up with something so that doesn't totally knock you off balance. So you can say something like, my father was a very dangerous person. He caused a lot of pain in my life. And I can understand how, if you've never lived it, you might just think, oh, well, he's your dad, I should make amends with him. But that's not what I'm going to do. And I just wanted to share this part of my life with you. I wasn't really looking for advice or for feedback or anything else. So sometimes I think letting a person know what you're looking for when you kind of drop a bomb like that helps them to be able to react better. So for example, another situation might be if you're going to say, you know what, I have something to tell you, and it's about my father. And it really, it's very a delicate thing for me. And so when I tell you this, I guess what I'm just looking for is like, I just need a hug, or I don't want you to, I need somebody to support my decision. And then that way you're kind of letting them know, this is what I'm needing from you right now. And a person that's on your side and who even remotely understands abuse will be able to provide that validation for you. Okay. Metamorphosis says, Dana, I am wondering how I will date anyone who has not been through narcissistic abuse. I'm not dating yet, but friends, including the one I may want to date, try to relate to me, and it's so clear that they don't get it. Okay, great point. So there comes a point when, okay, let me back up. Whenever we have something traumatic happen to us, this is in particular abuse that's really significant. It tends to divide up the way that we see the world. And it's those who have experienced it and those who have not. And I think there's pros and cons to understanding that. I think the pro is that other people are just not going to understand what you went through. And so to just kind of smile and nod and, you know, and just realize that they just don't get it, and that's okay. And hopefully they will never get it, frankly. But there also comes a point in healing where the abuse that happened to us, we don't build our whole identity around it. It's something that happened in our life. It's not like the core of our life. So because of that, because when a person's at that stage in healing where abuse is something that happened to them, it's not their identity, it's not the only thing about them, then we're able to relate to other people in much more positive ways. We're able to relate to people based on where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. So based around hobbies and interests and, you know, all of the other positive things in your life. And to people that haven't been through abuse, I think it's important that we don't turn them into our therapist. That if we still need to talk about this and to process it, that's better done with a life coach or a therapist or a support group. Because you want that dynamic with your relationship to really be one of equals, and one that has that sense of mutuality and can be mutually supportive. Not, I am a deeply damaged person and I need your love to fix me, because that doesn't work. And even if that relationship was amazing and you got married and lived happily ever after for the next 50 years, it's still not going to work. Because if our healing is completely contingent on another person healing us, if they die, if they leave, if something happens to them, then what? So it's just more of a Band-Aid if we're looking for somebody else to heal us. And so it's got to come from within. And it does take time to get to that place where you can rebuild an identity, or I should say, like, get back in touch with your identity, get back in touch with who you are. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's see. Okay, let me scroll up here. Dandelion, I wanted to mention, I got your book in the mail the other day, so thank you for that. And I look forward to reading that in the near future. Let's see. I'm getting questions texted to me. Let's see. Sarah Bellum, that's cute. Sarah Bellum asks, how do you respond to someone requiring reaction? Wait, I don't understand. How do you respond to somebody requiring reaction, the only recognition? Can you rephrase, or can somebody clarify that for me? And I also want to be on the lookout where is she? There's a gal who had a question last time and it didn't get answered. And so I want to make sure to address it this time. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and move forward because I don't understand that question. Okay, the next question from JJ is the soulmate connection an automatic red flag? I have people that argue with me all the time about this. And here's my updated answer on this. When we have a soulmate connection to somebody and it's right off the bat, this is a sign, this is going to sound harsh. It's a sign of immaturity. And it's a sign that we're falling for the fantasy. Now, Pia Melody, I'm going to blame it on Pia Melody. Pia Melody is the one that refers to this as a sign of immaturity, but she's also the one, but I'll give her credit for this, but she's also the one that talks about the draw of the pull of the fantasy for us. And the way that she worded that, at least for me, was it cut through any confusion that I might have had. And because I hadn't looked at it as a sign of immaturity or a sign that I was being pulled in by the fantasy, but she's spot on with that. So the reality is if you don't know a person, you don't know them. That soulmate connection is more often than not, it's getting caught up with another person that is, potentially doing a lot of mirroring, which may or may not be real. It's easy to get excited about a person when you meet somebody that has so much in common, that you have so much in common with. It can really feel like, boy, I have that soulmate connection with another person. But with manipulators, they will mirror back to you. They kind of shapeshift almost and become this social chameleon. And then they mirror back to you everything that they think that you're looking for in a person. So for me, if I start feeling that soulmate connection with somebody right away, it's just a sign for me to pull back a little bit because I'm not seeing them clearly. I'm seeing an idealized version of them. And time and experience with them will tell if you really are that compatible. But this is also, if somebody else is telling you, oh, you're my soulmate, I've never felt this way before, I've never met anybody like you, and it's right out of the gate. And when I say right out of the gate, I mean within the first few weeks of getting to know them. This is a sign of immaturity on their end, and it's a sign that they're idealizing you. So it's problematic across the board, regardless of who is doing it. And now the old me, probably, God, 7 years ago or so, I would have mistaken all of those feelings for sincerity. And I really would have believed that they felt the same way because I felt that way. And it would have been very easy for me to get caught up in that and to really mistake all of this intensity for sincerity. So the new me, so the old me that was very drawn to that, it was very attractive. It felt magical and mystical and, this idealized relationship. The new me, if somebody starts up with that kind of stuff, it immediately is a huge turnoff because it registers as immature as it actually is. And I've been dating somebody for years, but I don't, if I were to start dating again, or that kind of stuff normally just mainly happens with people that are dating. Friends, not so much. But I guess even if it did happen with friends, if somebody starts up with that, that's a big sign for me to pull back because they're immature and they're idealizing me. And odds are, when you put somebody on a pedestal, the only place they can go is down. And so I want somebody to like me for my humanness, not for this idealized version of who I am, and vice versa. If I really fall for somebody, I want to fall for who they really are, not who I think that they are. So, okay, let's see. Hello, Agatha. Okay, let's see. I'm learning how to use my phone. Oh my gosh, technology. No, I'm not. Shoot, why is it not working now? That is frustrating. Okay. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yes, and Slavic Princess says, and whomever has enough unhealed childhood trauma to be truly intimate with a partner can be very hurtful, especially, yes, especially if we're trying to be intimate with all of the wrong people. If we're misreading a lot of this stuff, and it's easy to do, if you don't know what it is, if you're not seeing it clearly for what it is, it's easy to misread it. And it's easy to get caught up in kind of, well, I'm just going to see the good in everybody, and I'm just going to get, nobody's perfect, and I'm going to give them another second chance or a 20-second chance. It's easy to gloss over these things. It's really, especially when it's something we really want. Like the example that I gave at the start of the live stream with that gal who went on this job interview. This is how predators and con artists get people. There's the carrot that they're dangling. And it's usually, I don't know if you've ever heard this acronym. It's the unaddressed vulnerabilities within people. This is how manipulators get you. The acronym is called FLAGS, and it's fear, lust, anger, greed, and sympathy. Those are the biggest drivers of human behavior. And we all have these weak points. So it's just something that we need to be aware of. So fear is a great driver. A lot of dictators have used this. Lust, you get this with online dating, people that are lonely, people that have been abused or traumatized that are especially vulnerable. Somebody selling you that fantasy of, oh, I really want what you want. And, oh, you're a single mother or a single father with a couple of children. I would love nothing more than to raise a family and to do this and to basically be everything you need me to be. It's really difficult to walk away from somebody who's how does the saying go? It's really difficult to see the problem when it's cloaked as a solution. And this is the case with con artists. It's easy to get somebody on tilt if you can get them angry, or when a manipulator can get a person angry, then you start acting erratically. Greed is a big one with promises of money. Even I would say the job interview one that we were just talking about falls under that. Here's a person who's unemployed. Most people live paycheck to paycheck, or they're 2 or 3 paychecks away from a financial catastrophe. And so she was highly motivated to make money, and things weren't adding up. They weren't adding up. And it was this, quite a few things were not adding up before she finally was like, I just got to get out of here. I can't stay. Sympathy is a big one. I would classify, I think a subcategory of sympathy is pity. And that's probably a bigger driver for a lot of us, is pulling on your heartstrings. The whole, I need you, I can't get sober, I can't, I can't make it through life. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to start drinking again, or I can't hold down a job. I can't think. I can't sleep. I need you. How can you leave me at a time like this? How can you leave us? This kind of stuff. And I have cancer. I'm really sick. All of these things pull at a person's heartstrings. And I think for us especially. So it's just something that we have to really be so grounded in our reality. And when you're grounded in your reality, it's so much easier to implement your boundaries and your standards and your deal breakers. And because when you're grounded in your reality, you have a solid sense of what you have control over and what you don't have control over, and where you start and end and where another person starts and ends. And so you're not, there's not this blurring of boundaries or this blurring of accountability that is always comes with an abusive or manipulative person, because they're trying to get you to take responsibility for them. They're trying to, reel you in. It's all about them. So, Okay, I'm getting some more questions here. Camilla asks, how long does it take in no contact before it becomes easier? That really depends on the person. Camilla, I think what can make it easier, well, there's a couple of things I think you can do that can make it easier on you. I think first and foremost is getting crystal clear that this is not for you. So I'm a big fan of people writing down a list called For When You Miss Him or When You Miss Her list, and you list out in bullet points. So something that's very quick to scan all of the reasons that this relationship is toxic for you. You write down and you make it painful. All of the lies, all of the cheating, all of the nonsense, all of the abuse, anything that you went through with this person, you list it all out. When you're starting to feel that no contact is getting difficult or those feelings of nostalgia start pulling at your heartstrings, you go and you read that list. That'll help. Another big thing is to fill the void that they've left in your life. And a great way to do this, there's a website called meetup.com. So I encourage people join dozens, and I'm not even kidding, dozens of groups, even groups that you're like, I don't even think I'm interested. You're like, I'm not even interested in science fiction. Join the science fiction group. Like, join as many groups as you possibly can, just so if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling low, you have something to do. You can go out there, you can go, and you never know where you're going to come across some really great people. So, and it helps to just build up, like really build up that social support system and your social calendar, and getting out there, cultivating new hobbies, new friendships, these kinds of things. It really does help, especially at first. So a lot of the people that I've seen that really struggle with no contact, and if they're struggling with it and they've been out for years and they're really missing this person, they think about him every day or her every day, they, it's a real challenge. Odds are it's because they haven't filled up that void. It's sort of like the alcoholic that quits drinking. And so now they just sit there and they're all they're doing is thinking about don't drink, or the smoker who does the same. And it's so much easier to be like, okay, substituting a quote unquote bad habit for a good habit. Because, the whole universe hates a vacuum, or the universe hates a vacuum, or universe hates a void. There's so much truth to that. So if you can fill it up with something positive, it really does make it a lot easier to move forward. Okay. Jihan asks, how do I stop feeling ashamed for being codependent? I guess I look at it in terms of everybody's got something. And the vast majority of society is dysfunctional. We call it quote unquote normal, but normal behavior is really just shades of dysfunction. The truly healthy people, I think this is an important distinction to make, the truly healthy people out there are the ones that have gone on this amazing personal growth journey. They've gone through some sort of hell where they've been forced to break down, or their life has been blown apart and they've been forced to really break down all of the social constructs and the belief systems and everything else they had in their life about boundaries and standards and deal breakers and who they should be and their understanding of other people and all of this. It really takes these really intense traumatic times for all of that to just be blown apart. But the beauty of it is then you can now move forward and start reassembling your life in your own way. So because the vast majority of society is just functionally dysfunctional, having that awareness of, boy, I'm really out of alignment. I'm too much of an overgiver, right? I have all these unaddressed vulnerabilities that have been driving my behavior. I've been people pleasing. I've been putting others first, so on and so on. That all of these things that you're realizing about yourself. There's no truly, there's no shame to be had in that. It's just this awareness of, okay, this is just personal growth. This is personal growth. And a big part of personal growth is the uncomfortable awareness of, oh my goodness, there are these personality traits. These are these things I've been doing. And there is that feeling of just embarrassment and shame of, I cannot believe I've been doing this or interacting with people this way or whatnot. But I think it's just all part of growth. And I think there does kind of come a time, well, I think maybe there's always a level of embarrassment and maybe even shame of, I can't believe I didn't know this, or I can't believe I was living my life this way. But I guess I just wouldn't stop there. You can feel the feelings because they're valid, but just realizing that like the vast majority of people are out of balance. You're just at the place now where you have awareness and you're working to correct it. So I guess have faith. It's all part of the process of waking up to this stuff and getting back in tune with yourself. Okay, let's see. Here is another question. Straight up Christina asks, I'm 2.5 years narcissist free after 16 years. I'm dating and found a great guy. I'm constantly looking for red flags and haven't seen any. Is it healthy to be questioning these things, or is it me being fearful? Okay, great question. So I guess, how long have you been dating this guy would be my follow-up question to that. And in addition to that, human beings, we are all wired for a certain degree of hypervigilance. Our brains only, like, its main job is to keep you safe. That's number one. Everything else is a distant second. So because of that, because our brains are always wired to keep us safe, they're always on some degree of alert. So I refer to it as like a healthy degree of skepticism. And that's important to have, because that's part of just being self-protective. So a lot of this kind of stuff is, you've been dating this guy for 3 months. So there's some things that you can do during this time. And I don't think you have to go out looking for red flags, but we have to be able to tell if something uncomfortable comes up, or something dangerous or unsettling or boundary busting comes up, that we're able to identify it for what it is. So there's certain situations, because 3 months is a good amount of time to kind of have a baseline, I think, understanding of another person, or at least the beginnings of a baseline understanding of them. But during this time that you're starting to get to know somebody, really going through a variety of situations with them. How are they around their friends? What is the character of their friends? How do they handle you saying no, or you setting a boundary, or you not responding to them right away? How do they handle stress? How do they handle frustration? How do, little things like, how do they treat the waitress? How do they treat animals? Is there anything squirrely that's unsettling to you? Are they, on social media and they're liking a bunch of sexy pictures of strange women? Are they, just paying attention? So I guess it goes back to what we were saying initially at the beginning of the live stream. It's less about figuring them out. It's more about figuring you out. So when you're able to identify, this is what is okay with me, and this is what is not okay with me. And when you experience something that's not okay with you in any relationship, all any of us can do is either assert ourselves and bring it up, or we can start distancing ourselves. that's basically it. So so then you kind of have to figure out, okay, well, what do I do? What would be the appropriate course of action here? Is this something where I can assert myself? Does this fall within my deal breakers? Like, is this egregious behavior, or is this just kind of two people trying to get in sync here, where they had some request, they wanted to go, to this really nice restaurant that's 2 hours away, and you have to work the next morning, and you realize we're not going to get back until probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and I got to be up for work in 3 hours. Right. And so then you're like, okay, even though they might not know your work schedule, they might not have even been thinking of that, but for you to say, hey, you know what, could we do this another day? I've got to be up to get ready for work at 6. Things like this. So you're continually setting boundaries, and you're just continually asserting yourself, and you're paying attention to how they handle that. And and here's the other thing too. We talked about this, I think, at the last book club live stream, and I really feel this is a valid point. With part of telling if a person is emotionally safe is how they're handling you setting boundaries, how they're handling if you're telling them information about you. How are they handling that? Do they joke with you about things that are deeply sensitive, that aren't funny to you? Are they gossiping? Are they spreading rumors? If you get in a squabble or a fight, are they using this kind of stuff against you? It's important to be aware of that. But it's also a big part of being emotionally safe is, are they able to bring stuff up to you as well? Are they able to assert themselves? Because if they're either the kind of person that's everything's always fine, they're passive. They're either completely passive, or they're passive aggressive, or they're aggressive. Any of those 3 things is a problem. So we feel emotionally safe with people that are assertive, and they say, hey, that doesn't work for me, or hey, can we do something different, or hey, I didn't find that joke funny. We feel more secure with them because we know where we stand. It's the people that we haven't kind of gone through these little mini conflicts, like getting in alignment with another person, getting in sync with another person. If our relationship hasn't gotten there, it's kind of on this holding pattern, because that's part of getting deeper with the relationship, is going through things together. And so part of healthy relationships, it's not like a lack of conflict. There's always going to be conflict if 2 authentic people are both present in the relationship. It's how we handle that conflict that makes all the difference. So paying attention to these kind of things. Is he bringing stuff up to you that's a concern to him? And, communication and this kind of stuff. So JJ says, I don't think I'm a narcissist, but I have the same results as if I am one. I appear toxic, isolated, fearful, and have low self-esteem. After watching Angie's video on old narcissists, I'm either a narcissist or a codependent, and the end equals the same. Well, this is all about personal growth. And I guess I would look at it as there's some personality traits that we all struggle with. When I was doing all of these different videos that I did on narcissists and codependence and all of this stuff, I was like, man, okay, this kind of describes me too. And like, what does that mean? And that's really terrifying, especially with like the love bombing and the whirlwind romances and the soulmate connection, these kinds of things. Because I was like, I'm not like schmoozing anybody or lying to them, but I was very quick to contribute to that and to jump into that. And I was freaking myself out of, oh no, what does this mean? So I guess the point is, there's all part of personal growth is especially with this kind of a format where you're hearing from all these other people and everybody's sharing their experiences, it's totally normal to have these kind of different traits come up and to question whether or not this is normal and what does this mean. I think the bigger focus, or maybe time better spent, is focused on getting yourself more in alignment. So if you realize, okay, you know what, self-esteem, I've got really low self-esteem. Okay, then these are all things that you can work on. The problem, let me back up. The problem with narcissists isn't so much their behavior, even though their behavior is incredibly problematic. The problem is they have no sincere desire to change because they have no sincere insight into what they're doing is wrong. Because it continually works for them. They have the emotional maturity of a child, and if a person doesn't experience pain from anything, and if they're not motivated to change, they're not going to change. That's why they don't change. So if you're seeing the stuff within yourself and you're like, oh man, I don't want to be this way. Like, I don't want to be, isolated or fearful or having low self-esteem or, whatever it might be. Like, these are all things that you can work on. So these are all things anybody can work on if they have awareness of, any of their behavior being a problem. So, okay, let's see. Let me go get some questions here. Jihan says, I look at my old diary entries before I was aware of narcissistic abuse, and my diary entries were full of low self-esteem thoughts, which totally validates the narcissist's reality that I am not good enough. And then how can I accept those entries regardless? It can be really difficult going back and reading journals when you have this level of insight. I went to my mom's house. This was probably about, I don't even know, 8 months or so ago. And she had a box of stuff and full of pictures and some of my old journals. And I began flipping through them. And I was horrified by what I was reading. It was all about boys. And these journals were from when I was like a teenager. It was all about boys. And you would have thought there was nothing else going on in my life, like, except for boys. And I guess in some ways there really wasn't. My whole life was about boys. And what was so disturbing about that was I could, like, the knowledge, the awareness that I have now, I look at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me trying to get validation from all of these men. And my self-esteem was on such a roller coaster because if a certain guy liked me, I felt great. But if they didn't like me, then I felt terrible. But then the next guy, if he liked me, I felt great. And then, and it just on and on. And that's a really difficult way to live. And so it's, I guess, these kind of, it's not that the narcissist honed in and validated things that were actually wrong with you. It's that for you, it was the acknowledgement of, okay, I had this low self-esteem, like everything that you're reading, like, these are really low self-esteem thoughts. These are really limiting beliefs. And so when we read stuff like this, that I think what we can do is give ourselves compassion and grace. I think if there's 2 lessons to learn in all of this, it truly is giving yourself self-compassion, learning what that really means, and getting back in tune with your intuition about what's dangerous and what's safe. So having compassion for yourself and thinking, oh my goodness, poor Jihan, poor old me, right? Poor young Jihan was struggling with this. And it's just kind of the acknowledgement of, boy, if you could go back in time, like hugging your younger self and realizing that all of these low self-esteem thoughts, that that these don't have to be true. Like there are other ways that you can think about yourself, and that there's, it's so much more important that we're in tune with our strengths and not basing our identity around our weaknesses, because we all have weaknesses. So, okay, let's see here. And then Agata has said, you can start doing some inner child work with your diaries. So I agree with that. Really kind of loving yourself regardless, starting to be the healthy adult that the younger version of yourself needed. So going back and kind of thinking about these wounded parts within yourself, like the healthy adult self within you, helping that kind of wounded child in you, and realizing, okay, there's so much right about you. Here are your strengths. We can work on some of these things, that you matter, that you have value, that other people's opinions don't define you, and that it's so critically important that you're putting your hurt feelings and your self-worth in two different buckets. Because people are going to say things that it's just part of life. They're going to say things that are really hurtful. They're going to do things that are really hurtful. But these things can happen. And if we're putting all of that negativity in the hurt feelings bucket, then it's not, shattering our self-esteem. And we're able to see wow, that person's really incredibly rude. Their behavior defines them. It does not define me. Normal, happy, healthy, well-adjusted people don't feel the need to go around destroying other people. So you see it more of like a limitation of theirs instead of a limitation of you. Because like I said, we all have weaknesses. So, it's just part of being human. Okay, let's see here. Leah says, how do I explain to new people that I don't have old friendships and family relationships, father, brother, best friend, etc., because I'm detoxing my life from narcissists? I look like a failure. I would kind of skirt the question, and because that's such a deeply personal thing that you for sure don't want to just put out there right away to people that you don't know if they're emotionally safe or not. So as you're meeting new people, if you would be surprised, most people really like talking about themselves, talking about their day, their kids, their new hobbies, whatever. So if it can help, most people don't even jump to that of where are all your friends, why don't you talk to your dad or your brother? Like that's kind of down the road kind of stuff. So I would just kind of turn the conversation to a subject matter that you are comfortable discussing. So you can just kind of reflect it back to them. So if they say something about, oh, well, do you have a brother? You could just mention something real minimally. Oh, I sure do. But I sure do. Like you could just leave it at that. And then how about you? Do you have any brothers or sisters? And then they just they get going, and it tends to not go back to you. And then if it does go back to you, just say, oh boy, there's a lot of water under that bridge with me and my brother. Down the road, I'll have to tell you the story. I kind of joke about stuff like that when people ask me about my exes or my past, stuff that's deeply personal. And they don't realize that they're asking a deeply personal question. So I don't want to necessarily make the situation awkward or kind of make them feel bad, because nobody else knows where our boundaries are except for us. So if somebody approaches a topic that's really sensitive to me, I will kind of turn it around and say, oh boy, well, that's quite the story. But that one's a 4-drink minimum. That's my line. and so it kind of just hints at, this is quite the story. I'll tell it to you later when we have enough time and I have enough to drink. And it kind of ends up being a non-thing. Or if down the road, you do want, once that person has proven to you that they're emotionally safe, you're feeling this connection with them, you can, and if you're comfortable being honest about it and just saying, you know what, the past few years have really just been an amazing personal growth journey for me. And there's just been, unfortunately, there's just been a lot of people, my inner circle has just really been in a state of flux and transformation. I just kind of outgrew some friendships and started seeing other people's behavior clearly. And it's tragic, but I'm just at a different stage in my life. And just kind of leave it at that. I think most people will be able to relate to that to some extent. And I don't think that you're a loser. I don't think this is kind of that whole like long night of the soul kind of a thing where you're walking along this journey towards healing. It's like what the other guy was saying about, oh, I feel so ashamed, and all of these uncomfortable feelings come at the beginning stages of this awareness of it all. Of, oh my goodness, I see, I cannot believe I didn't see this, the boundaries and standards and deal breakers and how I was not able to be assertive with other people. And there was all of this kind of dysfunction within me, and especially a lot of this really dysfunction in other people. And so it just led to this ongoing pattern of these just kind of unstable relationships, because I was really grossly misreading the situation, and I didn't know that I had enough value to keep myself safe. I thought I needed to wait around for concrete proof that they were problematic before I left. So I think you'll find if you come across other people, especially other people that are on that personal growth journey, they'll be able to relate to you. And I think they'll also find it refreshing, because there's a lot of us here tonight, but out in everyday life, it can be really difficult to find other people that have developed that level of ongoing, like continual introspection and examining their own behaviors, and they're really working on their personal growth. As a side note, there's, depending on where you live and such, but oftentimes there are meetup groups based around self-help and personal growth. And that can be a really great place to meet a lot of those people. Al-Anon can be another great place to meet people that are really working on their boundaries and have struggled with, problematic people in their life. And, they get it. So I think, again, most normal, decent people, they're not going to hold it against you. Yeah. So, okay, let's see here. Jihan says, how do I deal with brain fog? That is a difficult one. And I don't know if you're reading the book for this month for book club, which is The Body Keeps the Score. But he talks about the brain-body connection in that book, and it's fantastic. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from that book was when a person is traumatized, their prefrontal lobes, the part of your brain that's involved in logic and critical thinking, goes offline. And so we're having brain fog because that part of our brain is basically shut down. And this can be really crazy making, where, for example, I went through a house fire, what was back in May. And for many months, I would say up until fairly recently, I was embarrassed and shocked by how little I was retaining. I was having to ask people things over and over and over and over again. I was losing things. I was just not myself. Even though I didn't really feel traumatized, my brain was not working, and it was embarrassing and it was frustrating. And after rereading The Body Keeps the Score, it's like, oh, this is just part of it. Like when you go through something traumatic, whether it's a car accident, you find out a loved one has cancer, you find out you have cancer, you have a house fire, you go through an abusive relationship, there's brain changes that happen. More often than not, all of this stuff does come back online. So it's just, I think during this time when there is this brain fog, and you know what, my guess is when people talk about, they say don't do anything major for a year after a death or divorce, after some sort of major life change. I think intuitively, other people have known for decades that nobody's thinking straight. And people tend to make really terrible, impulsive decisions during that time. Like, I'm going to go open a restaurant, or I'm going to go move across the country, or I'm going to, like there was that one movie for a while, the guy went and bought a zoo. They do this kind of extreme stuff because they're not thinking straight, but that's why. It's that front part of their brain that's just not online. So the point being, how do you deal with it? You try to, if you can at all, avoid making major decisions. Try to kind of offload all of that, as much information, as much strain, I should say. Try to offload as much strain that in stress that's incoming. So any type of major decisions, if you can kind of just kind of put those on a holding pattern, or I would definitely run them past somebody else who does have solid judgment, realizing that it's just going to take you a while. You're going to have to kind of develop some coping techniques in order to get through this time. So it might be taking notes, it might be writing things down so you can go reread it, and realizing this is just all part of being traumatized, and giving yourself compassion and grace during this time, and just tripling up on your self-care, because our brains are an amazing thing, but there's so much that goes on that we're not even aware of. And I think that's definitely part of it. Oh, Agatha says, how is the bringing joy into your house going now? It's going. It's coming along. I still need to get my office in order, but it's really, it's getting there. So, but thank you for asking. Yes, lots of joy. It's nice to see it all coming together. And she also mentions, thank you for that. I was going to mention that and I forgot. Kind of a trigger warning with the book Body Keeps the Score. There are quite a few like different case studies and scenarios presented that can be really triggering about sexual abuse and war. He talks a lot about Vietnam vets, and there's a part in there about 9/11, and there's quite a few different traumatic events that people have gone through and kind of how they process information. So if you don't want to read the book for those reasons, but you still want to be a part of the book club discussion, which will be the last Thursday of this month, hang tight, which is February 28th. So February 28th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be book club. And we will not go into detail about the different scenarios. You know, we might mention briefly, but we won't go into any triggering detail. So, okay, yeah. C. Finn is talking about gardening. It says gardening is the most therapeutic thing for me. Yes, I agree completely. I cannot wait for spring to start gardening. I miss it. We've had the snowpocalypse out here. It's ridiculous how cold it was. A few days ago, that whole ice storm came through, and like 15 inches of snow, and it was minus 45 degrees. It was wild. So let's see. Yeah, Rob asks, where do I put my anger about being abused academically? I still harbor anger over my doctoral committee. I still harbor anger over my doctoral committee crapping all over my third-year doctoral recital. Anger's tough. Doctoral. I'm saying that word weird. Okay, anger with related to academic things. I don't know if you were here for that. I think you were, for the book club discussion on Fully Feeling, the one that we had last month. I love the way that Pete Walker broke all that down. And he mentions, kind of acknowledging how you're feeling, which you did, which is good. And then if you're needing to cry about it, it's okay to cry about it. I love what he said about angering, really making a concerted effort to take action on that anger so you can get it out of your body. And even The Body Keeps the Score also talks about this, how stress and trauma, oftentimes it's stored in our body. And one of the best ways to get it out is through physical activity. And this kind of along the same lines, but Eckhart Tolle in his book, The Power of Now, had mentioned something that always stuck with me that's probably related to like getting this out of your body. But there was a part in the book where he talks about ducks and how ducks fight. And, they go at each other on the lake or whatnot. And then what do? They're over it. And then they start swimming off. But then they'll start flapping their wings and squawking. And they just kind of get it out of their system. And then they go on. They're fine. So I think all creatures, mammals or not, have to get this stuff out of their system. So angering and really processing it, journaling it, the whole verbalizing of it is a big component. And then I think the processing of anger and healing from anger, these things happen in waves. It's not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. And as like Pete Walker was saying, as each wave kind of comes up, you learn that you can surf it, that it's okay to cry, to do the angering, to, kind of grieve whatever loss surrounding that. And you just keep doing that until it's fully processed. But this kind of stuff does take time. And I don't blame you for being upset. That's a frustrating thing when you've put that much time and energy into something and it's met with that kind of response. That I would imagine would be just devastating. Okay, let's see. Quentin says, "Hi, Dana. How do you deal with the flying monkeys without clipping their wings?" I guess it depends on where they are surfacing in your life. So if it's online stuff, it can help to switch all of your social media accounts to where you have a different name, different pictures, and you just kind of fall off the grid for a while until things just kind of simmer down. People aren't coming after you. They're not heckling you or harassing you, or it's not worth the stress. So changing up your social media accounts. I'll tell you something. I'm at such a point in my life where I value peace and in my life so much. And these kinds of situations are really difficult to resolve. And if it is at all possible for you, if they're bothering you at work, if they're at school, wherever it might be, sometimes I think it's worth looking for another job, hanging out at different places, because I will tell you, you're not going to, down the road, you're not going to look back and think, boy, I really wish I would have stayed in this horrible situation longer. You're going to look back and probably think of, boy, that was so not worth it. Like, I really wish I would have, started hanging out at a new place or just quit my job and got a different job, because the stress, that kind of stress is just not worth it. Okay, let's see here. That's a great point. CFIN says, does anyone here ever feel like they spend all of this time healing and you actually want to live again? Oh, you summed that up so well. Yes. Yes, I can relate to that. Probably a lot of people can relate to that. I think it was in that Pete Walker book we just finished reading. Another point that he had mentioned in there was the importance of fun. And he had said, I didn't cover this in the book club thing, but I probably should have. He had mentioned I have some professor, somebody in his life where they were so focused on enlightenment and self-awareness and all of this stuff that his teacher, whoever it was, had made it a concerted effort to have days that he considered. So instead of going towards enlightenment, they would go towards endarkenment. And during this endarkenment time, this was the time that they would order pizza, that they would binge watch Netflix, that they would just relax and have fun. They'd go out and play, I don't know, ice hockey. They would go to a baseball game, just get back into real life. Because yes, it can be so, I think for so many of us, we're so dedicated and motivated to make our lives start working. And I think there's also probably a lot of us that have really struggled because maybe we've been adult children, really struggled with having fun, and probably struggled with having fun for decades. And then coupled with, then you go through an abusive relationship or several, and now you're wanting to isolate, you're distrustful, you're not in the mood to have fun. There's all of these different things that can start stacking up. But I'm a really big fan of, and this is one of the reasons I encourage meetup groups and people getting back out there in life. Because if we're waiting around, if we're just sitting in a chair waiting to live life until we fully heal, we're going to be waiting a really long time. And because healing, it's a journey in and of itself. And I think the healing from abuse really merges with this like personal growth journey. And so I don't think there really is an end point. It's just this continual observation and time for self-reflection and all of that. But I think we can still have fun along the way. So I would encourage you to do what Pete Walker was doing and take time for endarkenment and to have fun. So it's important. I think it's a big part of being human. It's a part that so many of us have long overlooked because we're busy. People are parents. You work more than full time. You've got, all this stuff on your plate. It can be easy to not make fun a priority and to think, oh, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the energy, but it's important. I think I truly believe having fun is just as important as anything else. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, Grace, you're spot on. Grace says, we can only heal from abuse if we recognize what the abuse is. I'm so grateful to this channel for continually helping me recognize what abuse looks like. Yes, and I think, like I was saying earlier, our brains are wired to keep us safe. And because that's our primary driver, that's one of the big reasons when somebody goes through something really traumatic like this, especially if they had the feeling of that they might be in mortal danger from this person, there's such this instinctual drive within us to figure out what happened so we can prevent it from happening again. And that's why people tend to binge watch these videos and they become almost obsessive about this, because it's your brain is like, hey, time out. I got to figure out what's going on before I can let you go back out into the world. So, yes, the more knowledge, the more information people have about the different types of abuse and all of this stuff, that kind of obsessiveness and hypervigilance does tend to calm down quite a bit. So But again, I'm erring on the side of caution, having fun in safe ways. And yeah, just trying to enjoy the journey as much as we possibly can. Elizabeth says, at first it felt like such a hard job to get out to participate in activities. Now it feels natural and nurturing. Good for you. I love hearing that. And I just want to touch on a point with that too. A lot of people, myself included, really were in a place that they had to force themselves to get out there. Because, most people, when you're hurt physically or emotionally, you don't feel good. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to talk to people. You don't want to have to shower or get ready or put on a happy face, or, you just kind of want to sit in bed and, I don't know, eat Haagen-Dazs and watch Game of Thrones, or, you know what I mean? Like, you just don't want to be out in the world. And, but I really think there's a lot of value. It's sort of like when a person is injured, traumatically injured physically, one of the first things they do is they start physical therapy. So as soon as all of the life-saving stuff happens, as soon as the surgery happens, as soon as that person's bandaged up, they don't wait until that person fully heals to start physical therapy. They start it like hours after surgery, because it's so critical that the body keeps moving, so it doesn't atrophy, and that it doesn't there's that muscle memory and all of this. It's so important. But physical therapy, if you've ever had to do physical therapy, it's incredibly painful. And I think there's a lot of similarities to I kind of view it as like emotional therapy, with forcing ourselves to get back out into the world in as safe as a way as possible, so not dating right away, not, really meetup.com, great way to do it. Going out, you're going to, coffee shops or pizza places or the movies or what have you. You're driving yourself, you're driving home, you're engaging with people for a few hours, even though you might not feel like it. The other benefit to these kinds of groups is that if they're based around, I think it's important that they're based around something other than abuse. So if it's based around your love for bowling, or your love for science fiction or Chinese cooking, it helps your brain shift gears, because this kind of a trauma, it's like this bomb goes off and it's all we can focus on is this thing that happened to us. And it's all we want to talk about. It's just all consuming. And if you're in an environment with other people who don't have that in common with you, but they have other positive things in common, it can really help. It can help to our brain to shift gears, and for us to be reminded of there is life after this, that there's other things about me other than this abuse that I can relate to other people with. Like, I can still integrate into life, even though this thing happened to me. Okay. So let's see here. Let me scroll up. Rebecca says, what about dancing? I think dancing would be beneficial in lots of different ways. It would really get out a lot of that cortisol and adrenaline that's stored from the body after going through something traumatic. It can put you in a good mood, and it's a great way to just release all of this energy that's there. It's good exercise, and yeah, all for it. Let's see here. And Joe says, I never bring up my childhood years much with women I dated or friends of mine. I never wanted to bring them down. If I did it all over again, I would have talked to somebody, but I suppressed it. Yes. And here's the thing too, with truly being intimate with another person, is if we're being appropriately intimate with somebody, they've proven themselves to be emotionally safe. You've known them for quite a while. You know how they fight, you know how they handle frustration, you know how they handle stress, you know how they handle delicate information that you've shared with them in the past. And so there's that level of trust and respect and emotional safety that's there. And so I think the beauty in so much of our pain is it's not only what makes us human, it's what helps us bond to one another. I think that's frankly, I think that's part of the appeal of my videos, is because I was very open, because I didn't know anybody was watching. To be honest with you, when I first started, I was very open about my pain and what I was going through, and it resonated with other people. And the other people were like, oh my gosh, I thought I was totally alone in this. I can relate. And so sometimes if we've, especially with another person, if we've built up that sincere relationship with them, where there is this kind of growing level of intimacy, and then we open up something that's really intense like that, for the right people, it just makes them love you more. I had a friend, I don't know if I should, I won't say exactly what happened, but he had a very traumatic incident happen in his childhood. And he hadn't told anybody for years. And he's in his mid 40s, been married he married his high school sweetheart, and they have a handful of kids and all this, but he'd never told her this one thing. And he was so scared to tell her, and how she would view him and how it might impact their relationship. And he ended up, it's so touching. Like, he ended up telling her what had happened when he was a child. And she totally accepted it. And she was heartbroken because they'd been together for 20 something years, and and she was like, oh my gosh, you've been carrying this alone for 20 something years. Like, I'm here. Like, I can help you carry this. And it brought them even closer. And that's when, when you're in a good relationship with somebody, is when these things do happen, all of these vulnerabilities and your soft spots, they're not used against you, but then other people realize, oh my goodness, thank you so much for trusting me enough with something that is so personal to you. Like, that's such an honor to bestow to the right people in your life. And then they in turn feel so much more comfortable of, oh my goodness, here's something that I've been carrying, and I have been so concerned that you're going to judge me about this. And then they share something, and then it just takes the relationship to an even deeper level. So, yeah, it's difficult, and men, I think Joe was saying, society got me to believe that men don't talk. I believe you are 100% right in being open in order to be authentic. That's why I never allowed myself to date for marriage in mind until my first in 2012. I waited until I was 40 before getting married. My self-esteem said, Joe, you're not good enough. Yeah, I think a lot of men, it's so unfortunate. I think a lot of men struggle with that. With women, by and large, we tend to we tend to talk a lot more. It's probably, that's part biology, but it's also part socially accepted. And women tend to have friendships, and they tend to do more with their friends, whereas men oftentimes don't really have that. And that can be really difficult when you're going through a hard time. If the friends that you have are more like, Super Bowl kind of buddies, or barbecue buddies, but not really people that you can get really deep with. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, all the different toxic messages that we give people, boys and girls, about all of this stuff. Because, we have differences, but we also have a lot of similarities. And it's just important that people understand their emotions and that they're validated and that they're able to express this with safe people. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. That's true too, Rob says, and it's a pity so much drinking sometimes has to happen for men to open up to other men. That's a really valid point. Yeah, I agree. I think it just speaks volumes about there's that added challenge for a lot of men of that they're just not comfortable talking about what's really going on, you know, and other men don't know how to handle it oftentimes too. It's sort of like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this. You know, this is awkward. So, you know, I think it's becoming a lot more prevalent that men are, you know, they're changing the ways that it's just becoming a lot more socially acceptable for people to go to therapy and for people to talk about their feelings and for people to just be honest with themselves and other people. Yes, I heard that. Missouri Cowboy says the media is having a hate fest with Liam Neeson for sharing that he's human and felt murderous. I so freaked. I felt so guilty for feeling murderous to my exes. Oh, real quick, Dandelion, good night. She says, good night, everybody. Good night. We'll see you soon. Missouri Cowboy. Yeah, I think that the issue with Liam Neeson was, so I don't know if you guys heard the story. So Liam Neeson had a friend a while back who I believe was raped, who had left I think a bar and was raped by a stranger, and the stranger happened to be Black. And so Liam had asked her, you know, what did the guy look like? And was, you know, obviously he was upset. This happened to a friend. And so she had said, oh, this guy was Black. And so Liam had made the comment of he was so enraged and he wanted vengeance that he kept walking past this bar and he was waiting. This is where this kind of stuff gets really problematic. So I can see where the media has an issue, but he had said that he was basically waiting for, in his mind, he was waiting for the rapist, like a Black guy that he would immediately think was a rapist, to come out of the bar so he could attack him. But I don't think that he meant that in a racist way. I think that was the defining characteristic of the guy. Just like if the guy had been really tall, or if he'd had red hair or a long beard or bald, if she had said that, I think he would have had the same mindset of like, well, I'm going to sit outside the bar and, you know, I'm going to wait for that bald guy to come out and then, you know, we'll have some words. But the thing is, you don't know if it's the same bald guy or Black guy, or, you know, like that part's kind of scary. But feeling that level of rage for an injustice done to you or somebody else is totally normal. But yeah, kind of scary if it's, you know, you've got to be like, you need to know exactly who it is, not just generalities about them, because then, you know, that's not good. And Rob says, oh my God, I wouldn't want to be in Liam's crosshairs. Yeah, no kidding, right? But I thought that was really, like commendable in some ways, that he was so honest about that. And the way that he was saying it, he's like, I'm ashamed to admit that this was my thinking back then when this happened. He's like, I was not in the right frame of mind. I was so blinded by rage that I just wanted some sort of like vigilante justice. And, you know, he wasn't proud of it. He wasn't anything. He's like, this was just what was going through my mind. So let's see. Yeah, Kelly says Liam is brave to reveal his shadow side. Yeah, I think so too. And I think even especially the fact that there were some elements in his story that And, I didn't sound to me that he was racist, but the fact that anybody would even admit to that, because I think that adds an added layer of embarrassment, and potential, and I would think you would know, like, social outrage if you were to say something that's controversial like that. So to be able to admit that and be able to admit, like, this is crazy thinking on my part, and kind of being honest to the point where you're acknowledging this is crazy thinking on my part, but I'm saying this knowing that I might potentially upset some people is, I don't know. I think that's respectable. Okay, let's see. Let me look some questions here. Did anybody, there was the gal early on in the live stream who had asked a question, but I don't know if she's still here or if she left a while ago, but she had a question from last week and she wanted it answered, and I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen her. So I really, if she's still here and she's still interested in discussing what she wanted to discuss, I'm open for that. Camilla asks, do any of y'all feel like you view the world differently, more pessimistic after the narcissist? Yes, and I think that's probably normal when you realize that there is evil in the world, that that the world is not a fair and just place, that bad things can happen to good people, and that love doesn't conquer all, and that people don't treat you all the time how you treat them. Like a lot of these cliches and platitudes that we were raised with aren't real. So there's kind of this I think stage in healing where there's so much of this fantasy. We realize we've been living in this fantasy reality that does not exist, and that can be terrifying. And this is, what so many of us struggle with, is then you start seeing reality for what it is, but unless it can be a very lonely time, because if other people haven't gone through this, they're still caught up in that same kind of thinking. And then it can make us feel even more self-conscious and hypervigilant and insecure about, seeing the world more clearly, I guess. But I also think that down the road, once you're able to get yourself to a place where you have this awareness that, yes, there are dangerous and destructive people out there. And yes, they walk amongst us. And that it just takes time to be able to tell who is who in all of this. And to be able to learn how to effectively trust, how to appropriately trust people, how to err on the side of caution, how to not look to others for validation as to what you do, and to like there's so many lessons that we have to really learn. But once you're able to keep yourself safe, it makes that part of, like, the pessimistic worldview, I think it kind of it just dissipates, and it just is, you just have a more, to me, it's very empowering, because then you're seeing reality for exactly what it is. And it almost kind of feels like a superpower because a lot of other people don't see this stuff clearly. And then when you start calling it, you're like, this is what this is. Like, boom, boom, boom. Like, these things are probably going to happen. And then it happens, and they look at you like, how did you know that? And you're like, I can spot manipulation a mile away, So, yeah. Sometimes it's not pessimistic, it's just being realistic. But that kind of bitter and jadedness, I think does tend to go away. It tends to definitely lessen in time. Let's see. Sydney says, should we vet people? Like, are there questions we should ask to vet people? It's not as simple as that. I mean, there's things that you can do, right? Like you can pay attention. How does this person handle it when you disagree with them, or um, when you say no, or when you try to set a boundary? How do they handle frustration and stress? Like these things are all very telling, but time is the biggest indicator. Time will show you everything that you need. So it's going slow when you're getting to know a new person. And if you're getting caught up in thinking that they're so amazing, that you've met the most amazing person ever, realizing that that's part of this very normal, idealized stage that relationships go through, but that stage is not real. It's just kind of this chemical induced haze that we fall into, and that kind of settles down at about the 90-day point. And then you start really seeing the person a lot more clearly for who they really are. So just going slow, paying attention to behavior, addressing anything uncomfortable that comes up. And if it falls within your deal breakers, then it's time to go. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so sorry, there's so much going on in the chat. Try to keep track of it all. And I agree. Last Miranda, they're talking about the narcissistic stare. She says, I don't think the narcissistic stare is something mystical. We need to stop making them look like they have some type of superpower. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Generally, what you're seeing when you see somebody give you that cold, dead, fish-eyed, shark kind of look, where they just look at you and you feel just this shockwave of terror, where you're like, I don't even know who this person is. Like their eyes, I swear to God, just changed color. They're black. Their eyes are black. It's not the person that I knew. Like that kind of stuff, to that extent, what you're seeing is adrenaline in another person. So when any of us go into fight mode, your body releases adrenaline. It makes your pupils expand, so your eyes get really dark. And then that whole kind of like flat affect you see on them is their lack of empathy and remorse. They're in fight mode. They don't care. When any of us are in fight mode, we don't have empathy. We're in fight mode. So that's why it comes across as demonic or otherworldly or terrifying, because we tend to associate empathy with the human connection. There's that level of like familiarity or friendliness that people tend to have. And we don't normally see people in fight mode unless, there's people if you're getting into a fist fight outside the bar or something. Like people don't normally go into fight mode, and they don't normally go into fight mode to that level, especially if it's seemingly unprovoked. So that can seem really strange. Sorry, my nose is just itching. If people are talking about the narcissistic stare and it's not to that extent, but it's more of they're just staring at you, I view that as more like a predatory gaze. Like they've got their sights locked on you. And for whatever, it's just like, it reminds me of when I was in Italy. And we were with this tour group, and the thieves over there are really good. And I think it was that tour guide who'd made the comment of, basically, if they have their sights set on your stuff, just consider it gone, because they're that good. And it's very similar to predators, to any type of predator. It can be difficult to get out of harm's way. Like if they have their sights set on you, and if they know, this is where like knowledge is truly power. Because if you're unaware of this and somebody's got their sights set on you and they're saying all of the right things and they're continuing to say all the right things and they're getting you alone with love bombing or with controlling behavior or what have you, and then they're saying all the right things, if we're not aware of what that is, it's really easy to get hooked into that. So as a side note too, I was thinking the other day, you guys have probably heard the saying, and I don't know I think it's attributed to Hitler, but I don't think Hitler really said it. Something along the lines of, if you want, like how to have power over people, is something along the lines of, basically you tell a lie big enough and you just keep repeating it. And it dawned on me the other day that that's not necessarily true, because it's not just any lie. Like if I were to tell you a lie about, I don't know, UFOs, that I have some sort of direct connection to Martians, there's not really any appeal to other people. Maybe there might be interest, like that's really interesting, tell us more, but there's not that emotional connection to it. How these lies, telling a person a big lie and you keep repeating it, how that hooks people in is if it's a lie that speaks directly to their vulnerability. So, and this goes back to that love bombing and why this can be so dangerous. If you've got a predator that has their hooks in you and they just keep repeating the same lie in maybe in different ways. I love you. I need you. You're the one for me. How, don't give up on me. I promise this time will be different. I'll go to therapy. I'll go to rehab. I'll do whatever you need. I want to be the one, we belong together. You're my soulmate. I've never felt this way before. Like they just keep at it and it wears a person down because they're continually being told that big lie over and over again. And it's really hard to walk away when somebody's telling you, when you've got this vulnerability and you're holding on to hope and somebody's telling you everything that you're wanting to hear. So, okay, let's see here. Van Queer says, Dana, please tell me how I can get out of this fantasy fog. I'm overwhelmed with life struggles and the narcissist seems like the best thing, but I know he is the worst. I'm thinking of leaving my state. Well, sometimes there is a lot of benefit to leaving a state and starting over. You don't have to look over your shoulder. You don't have to worry about running into them. It's a total change of scenery. If that is a possibility for you and that wouldn't be cutting you off from like your support system, then I would strongly consider it. But I would definitely make sure that you've got a plan before you just show up in another state. So ideally housing, a job, you've kind of scoped out an area. There's some sort of plan. So you don't get there and then everything kind of falls apart because this was an impulsive decision. And then you're, stuck over there. And then it's kind of causes even more fear, which might drive you back to this narcissist. So, thank you. Agatha says, thank you for exploring what really helps to heal survivors. And thank you for being a great author. Well, thank you, my dear. And thank you. Thank you for being a good friend and for all of your painting stuff that you do and all of our conversations. We just enjoy that so much. So thank you. Okay, so Van Queer. You're thinking about moving out of state. I think, as long as you get everything lined up and it's done with, some sort of plan in place, then that's fine. The fantasy fog, really, it helps. We're in the fantasy fog is part cognitive dissonance and part just, it's denial. It's holding on to hope. And if you write down that list, like I mentioned earlier, where you're putting in bullet point format of every reason, every painful thing that he's done, every reason as to why this relationship is toxic, and then you go back and you reread it, it'll snap you out of that fantasy fog. And so some other things that you can do too are to continually remind yourself of, you don't miss him, you miss the man that you thought he was. You don't love him, you love the man that you thought he was. Once you can really get this clear in your mind, it helps to cut through all of that cognitive dissonance. because it doesn't make sense to us. How can I love somebody who's so terrible to me, or who has done all of these awful things? It helps your brain compute what happened, because it's like, anybody getting tangled up with an online dating scammer, and they, con them out of their life savings. I would imagine that even for them, it's really difficult to go on. There's still probably aspects of that they miss, because I think it takes your heart a little while to catch up with your head. And when a person is coming at us with, as the solution to everything, and they're just showering you with, they seem to be such a good fit. Like, you have so many things in common. It seems so wonderful if they weren't so sociopathic, right? But we realize the sociopathic part is the deal breaker. Like, I can't have this pathological lying and the cheating and the stealing and the craziness and the lack of accountability and the abuse. I can't do this. So it's seeing them clearly and not letting yourself indulge in the fantasy of just being very clear. It's a fantasy. I had a friend of mine after my first narcissistic relationship, because it was so hard for me. I kept struggling, even though I had the benefit of kind of having everything, like the curtain ripped open. So it was a lot easier for me to just walk away and be done. It wasn't what a lot of people experience, like little, like certain lies bubbling up and surfacing every now and again. I just saw, I saw a lot. I saw enough. I'll say it that way. Fake emails, fake names, fake nonstop cheating, lies. It was just so much that I realized I'm not dealing with a normal person here. Like, I'm so done. But I really did like so many things about the man that I thought he was. But I had to just, at a point, my friend had said, she's like, Dana, you just need to shut that door and not open it. Like, don't do this. Don't torture yourself. Don't even go back there. Just shut the door. Because it was all a manipulation. You don't need to sit there and, kind of snuggle with the fantasy, because it wasn't real. It's just it's a waste of time. So just being really straight up with yourself. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Last Miranda asks, or makes the comment, the number one advice you hear to get over a breakup is to find someone new. Narcissists do this all the time. Oh, shoot, hold on. Lost the narcissists do this all the time, and even normal people too. I wonder, maybe we are wrong with taking so much time to heal. So yeah, you do hear that a lot. There's a cliche out there, like the best way to get over somebody is to get under somebody new. That's terrible. But the reason that is so, that works, I don't recommend this at all, by the way, because that can lead a person smack back into another abusive relationship. The reason that does work, though, or seems to work, at least in the short term, is it's just dopamine. So there's this high that comes from, the love bombing and the thrill of a new person and all of this stuff. It's just all these feel-good chemicals that are going through oxytocin and dopamine and all of this stuff. And then when you find somebody new, it's just kind of, it's like a shortcut around the pain of grieving the loss of the previous relationship. And so, you're just back in all of that dopamine and oxytocin, all that feel-good stuff. But, and I don't think a person needs to take years and years and years. Like I said, the healing, it kind of dovetails into this whole personal growth journey. And that's a lifelong journey. if a person's even remotely interested in self-actualization, it's a lifelong journey. There is no destination. Like, it just keeps going. So there are some foundational lessons that I think people absolutely need to learn before they even consider dating. And I think they need to be able, this is part of a book that I'm working on, is like writing down everything, like what it really means to heal from narcissistic abuse. Because healing doesn't just mean not feeling suicidal or not feeling like your life is blown apart. Like, that's part of it, but a much bigger part of it is learning how to build appropriate trust with other people, learning that you have value, and that you matter just as much as anybody else, and that it's okay and healthy to make your wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions a priority, and that you don't need to wait for concrete proof that a person is indeed, or a situation is indeed problematic. Like, if it's squirrely, if it's causing mental anguish or perpetual confusion, or it's uncomfortable, it's ongoing uncomfortable, it just doesn't feel right, you feel fearful, you feel like you're in danger, you feel unsettled, that's enough. That is the concrete proof. That's enough concrete proof to take action on. You don't need to wait. You don't need to wait until they pull a gun on you, or you catch them cheating, or something like way extreme. That mental anguish, perpetual confusion, feeling like you're in danger, feeling afraid, these kinds of things are not normal, and it's important that we heed those early warning signs. Understanding, I think a big part of healing too is understanding that dating from a place where we aren't looking for anybody else to fix us, and we've got to be at a place enough, we've got to be at a good enough place. Our self-esteem has to come from inside. It can't come from the external. Because if that next relationship ends, they break up with you, they ghost you, whatever they do, we can't have our self-esteem pinned on this relationship. And then if this falls apart, then that'll be the end of us. Like, we just can't even handle it, because it's not going to work. And it's a turnoff to healthy people, because it's a lot of heavy lifting. Like, we're not at the place, if we can't it's not fair to the other person to turn them into our therapist. Like, we've got to be able to bring, a reasonably healthy, well-adjusted self to the table. So, and you will make radically different choices in partners when you feel like you have something to offer. If you feel that you're a hot mess and that nobody would want you, and that there's all of these things wrong with you, then we're going to continue settling for crumbs. And I think, no more crumbs, no more it's a saying, crumbs don't keep a person fed, they keep a person starving. So it's so important to get to that point where you realize the value that you have. And again, we were talking earlier, everybody's got weaknesses. So don't get hung up on that. It's more about you focusing on what's right with you. Like, you've got to you have value, you have worth. These are the things that are right about you. Maybe you're creative, maybe you're compassionate, maybe you're a good listener, that you like animals, that you love to paint or cook, or that you are sincerely concerned about other people, that you like going camping. Thinking about what you're good with. I don't know, you're good with money, you know how to balance you know what I mean? Like, you pay attention to your bank account. I don't know. There's so many things that a person can have on their side. You're an out of the box thinker. You appreciate comedy, these things, getting to know what you have going for you. So then when you do start dating, you realize that you have value and you know what you bring to the table. So, okay. Okay, great question. Taldanum says, what does really valuing ourselves look like? And I think she's responding to Grace. And so Taldanum says, self-love that is taking care of yourself, your health, your body, your interest, and your relationships. Absolutely. That's so spot on. So yes, valuing yourself. So I'm a big fan, we hear the term self-love and that gets thrown around a lot. And it's a very kind of nebulous term. Like, what does that really mean? And I had been encouraging people, swap out the word swap out the love part of that phrase, like the self-love, swap out the word love with the word value. And then it makes a lot more sense. So loving yourself and valuing yourself, these are all synonyms. So when you value yourself, you're valuing your body, you're valuing your time and your energy and your emotions and your personal space and your relationships and everything in your kind of, orbit, everything around you, you're valuing. It's just such a game changer. So, okay, let's see here. Let's see here. Jane, that's a great question, asks, are there really low stakes baby steps to working on boundaries that I could do on my own? I love that you asked that question because I think it's a really valid one. Back to meetup.com. This to me is the lowest stakes way to really practice this kind of stuff. It can really be great for paying attention to how you feel around different people and getting in tune. It's really difficult. Let me back up. It's really difficult for us to set boundaries if we continually second guess ourselves and we're second guessing our reality and we're more focused on trying to figure out, are they toxic? Are they a narcissist? Are they a sociopath? Are they trying to manipulate me? Did they really mean that? Or did I take it weird because of my past or because of my mother? Or we get all caught up in this. Before a person can effectively set boundaries, you've got to be able to tell when your boundaries have been crossed. And that really starts with getting in tune with how you feel. So because it's not a logical, our boundaries are fluid and they grow and change as we grow and change. So, and they grow and change as the nature of our relationship with this other person grows and changes. So it's always in a period of transition. And a great way to tell when your boundaries have been crossed is, I think one of the first feelings that we have is confusion. In discomfort, like, ooh, that person just sat a little too close to me, or that person's walking a little too fast behind me in a parking lot. Like, that does not make me comfortable. And so when these so if you're out, let's say you're out at a meetup group and these kind of the person walking behind you in a parking garage is a pretty major thing. And I would just encourage you to get someplace safe, right? But if somebody's sitting a little too close to you, or they ask you an inappropriate question, or they have a request, they ask if you could give them a ride home, and you're not okay with that. These kinds of things, thinking about and again, this is not about trying to figure out their intentions. It's about trying to figure out where your lines are with what's comfortable and uncomfortable for you. So if it's uncomfortable for you, then figuring out kind of a wide variety of ways of how you can assert yourself. And so when people start setting boundaries, initially, they have a really difficult time being fully assertive. And I think in part because when we're fully assertive with another person, it's an incredibly vulnerable thing. because we're letting another person, we're risking them getting angry, we're risking them leaving, we're risking them making fun of us. And so it can be difficult. It's a lot easier to be passive, passive aggressive, or aggressive, at least in the short term. So it takes time and practice becoming comfortable with being assertive and becoming comfortable with how other people might respond to that. So setting boundaries in little ways, really thinking about kind of what is and isn't okay with you. So so maybe you're kind of thinking about like peripheral things in your life, like stuff that's on the fringe, that's really not that big of a deal that you could start with. So here's an example from my own life. Years ago, I had a friend who just, a dear friend, I cared very much for her, but she called me all the time, like around the clock. And it was, it wasn't working for me. It was disrupting my sleep. I had to work. It wasn't working. And so it had gotten to the point where I finally told her, I said, you know what? I just want you to know, I care about you very much, but I've made a new rule in my life. So when I set a boundary, it's not about punishing her. It's not about making it about, that she's bad or wrong. It has nothing to even do with her. It has everything to do with me, because boundaries are an extension of us. So letting her know, you know what? I decided that I'm going to turn my phone off at 9:00. And if you call, just leave a message or text me and I'll get back to you in the morning, probably at, 9. Because by the time I get into work at 8 and you get settled in and you have, morning report or whatever. And then, it takes a little while to get back to somebody. So just owning your time can be a great way to start. If somebody, some other kind of low stakes, baby step ways of having boundaries would be with having opinions. A lot of us really struggle with having opinions and expressing our opinions. It's really wild, even about stuff that doesn't seem to matter, such as, what do you want for lunch? What do you think of a certain TV show? What do you like? What do you like? What do you don't like? So becoming more comfortable with having an opinion and thinking about, it's so easy to slip into, oh, I don't care. Whatever you want for lunch, I'll just go along with that. I don't care. That Pia Melody calls it, we're just wantless and needless. And it takes time to get into tune of like, no, actually you do have wants and needs because you're a human being. It's getting in tune with them that is the challenging part. So, hi, Teacher Spring. She said, quietly listening tonight. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, Dana. Well, thank you. I'm glad my ramblings and inner thoughts can be of use to others. So I'm glad. Let's see. That's a good one. EXO says, a self-loving person refuses to settle. This is absolutely how I approach life. Yes. And when we get to that point of raising standards, this is when standards come into play. You get to a point, and standards are really, I think, a direct reflection of a person's self-esteem. When we have kind of what we think we're worth, what we think, that we're capable of receiving in this life, kind of a thing. And we already all have standards. It's just oftentimes we don't think of them that way. And the standards that you do have, we tend to take for granted because it's just so obvious to us. Generally, how much, let's say, for example, if a person it might be just a no-brainer that, I'm not going to date somebody that is addicted to heroin or meth. Like, that's just my standard. It's not even negotiable. Doesn't make them bad or wrong. It's just I don't want to get tangled up in an active addiction in another person, or a person that's an alcoholic. Like, that's my standard. Or even people like with money, oftentimes, like however much money we're making, that tends to be our new standard. So it would be it's difficult to take a next job making less. You just take it as a given of, yeah, I make X number of dollars a year. I fully expect to be able to get paid that or more, because now I have more skills that I bring to the table. And so there's all these standards that we tend to have that we just don't even think about. So it's worth examining where your standards are. Because also really and it just goes back, when you're firmly grounded in yourself and you have that self-esteem and your standards are in line with that, your boundaries really are like your bodyguard of your standards. It becomes a lot easier to set boundaries because it just reinforces your standards. So if my new standard is every night at 9:00, that's my time to wind down. This is true. It's embarrassing, but true. I watch a bunch of kind of like, I call it my trash YouTube, just gossip and drama shows, just stuff that's brainless. And it's a nice welcome relief. And I'll watch that for a little bit, or sometimes I might read. That's my standard. Like, I just need time to just unwind and do something where I can either lose myself in a book or I can just not think about stuff, let my brain unwind. It's just non-negotiable. And so when you have these non-negotiables in your life, it becomes a must. My brother is Mr. Fitness, and he works out 7 days a week, and that is a must for him. That's his standard. He's just ripped year round. I mean, he just looks phenomenal. And whereas for me, I'm not. So my standard is, it would be nice. It would be nice to go get some exercise or to have a salad, but totally not a must. For him, it's a must. And he makes it an important thing. If we ever travel, go to the same place, one of the first places we're going is the grocery store, because he eats a very, rigid diet. So it just becomes a non-negotiable of like, yeah, this is just part of it. And other people are normally fine with that, whatever your standards are. Okay, so let me see here. Let me scroll up and see. Joe asks, is it true that healthy empaths on the -2 to -1.1 range are best compatible with those on the healthy narcissistic side of the pendulum, the +1.1 to +2 from the human magnet syndrome? I think if you think about it in terms of, so let me back up a little bit. So Ross Rosenberg, his book, Human Magnet Syndrome, which I think is a great book, by the way. He basically talks about kind of on one hand, opposites attract, but also on the other hand, kind of like, water seeks its own level, basically. Like attracts like. So, which can sound kind of conflicting. So let me just kind of cover that. So he has this whole kind of time, or not, what would you call it? Like it's like a spectrum of, you've got kind of narcissists on one side and more like empaths or overgivers on the other side. And like, so you have overtakers, then you have overgivers. And the extreme ends of both are incredibly dysfunctional. So if you have a person and I should add, boundaryless. So if you have a person that's so high in overgiving that they're putting everybody else first, themselves last, they have no degree, no ability of being self-protective, then there's a very solid chance that they're going to wind up with somebody who is, lies and cheats and abuses and steals and does all kinds of things. Because both of these people have no boundaries. So the takers take and the givers give, and it works, until a point where it just implodes. So what Joe is talking about is more on like the kind of narrow piece of that spectrum. Yeah, it can. But let me clarify that part about that narcissism, that like +1 to +2 part. There is a term and a concept that's called healthy narcissism. And that's what that little piece of the pie is. So healthy narcissism is not like what we would normally call, what we think of when we think of a narcissist is not what healthy narcissism is. Healthy narcissism it's this attitude of, well, why not you? Why not me? I matter just as much as you. You have the self-esteem to get up and to set goals, to think you're worthy of obtaining goals, and to have the motivation to go out and start achieving them. That's a healthy degree of narcissism, and that's something that we all need. I would say a healthy person it's not such a rigid thing with that spectrum. It's that range. So they're going from, let's say, like a +2 to a -2. So they're going from the taking to the giving, but it's a very narrow range. So with that, more of the empath side, it's more of kind of, so the overtaking side would be like, why not me? Like, why not you? Why not me? Right? The empath side would also be, well, why not you? Why not me? But it's different in the sense of, I'm okay. Like if a person that it's in my inner circle that I care about that needs something, I can be there. I can make them a top priority. And there's a time and a place for us to put, within moderation, like putting our needs and wants aside. It's the parent that, doesn't buy themselves, that goes without, so that they can get their child a Christmas present that they want. It's these kinds of little minor sacrifices that people make for their loved ones, but it's not to the point where we're sinking ourselves to save somebody else. So there's that ability to temporarily put somebody else first, but still, I should add, still doing self-care when we're doing that. So if we're, let's say, for example, you've got a loved one in the hospital and, you've got to work. And so you're trying to juggle all that and you're trying to spend time with them and be there for them and work. You're realizing that all of these things are a priority, but for you, if a person, if somebody's in your inner circles in the hospital, okay, I'm going to be there. I'm going to sit with them. I'm going to do these things. But then I've also got to make sure that I am still taking care of myself in this. So it can't be extreme one way or the other, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think by and large, where the opposites attract comes into play is people do tend to, people that are more reserved tend to go for people that are more outgoing, kind of just supplements their personality kind of a thing. So I think that was one of the things that really attracted me to Travis is we're very different in a lot of ways. And it's nice because he's like a lot more easygoing, and we watch totally different stuff on TV, and we have, for the most part, very different interests. And it's just kind of nice to not have all of like the heavy stuff in common. He helps lighten me up, I think. So, okay, so I hope that answered your question. Jamie, thank you for the live stream donation and says, this live stream is the highlight of my week. I'm coming up on my 2-year divorce anniversary from my ex-narcissist, and I'm still learning so much. Thank you for your loving dedication and sharing your knowledge and experiences. Well, thank you so much. That means so much to me. And 2-year anniversary, that's a big anniversary. So good for you for moving forward in your healing and in your life. And Taldanam is talking about, says, I have some of the pathological giving problem. It's like I have I have an issue with pathological giving. I'm also working on it. Yeah, this is the pathological giving kind of stuff. Like I was mentioning earlier, as we're going forward and understanding all of this personal growth and this self-awareness, and we're understanding other people, we're understanding ourselves, we're understanding all of this, these things are going to continue to surface where we're like, oh man, wow, okay, that's, I didn't realize. It's just difficult. It's difficult for us to see areas in ourselves that we need to work on, because we all have blind spots in our personality because we're so close to ourselves. And especially with stuff like this, where it just flies under the radar of ourselves and so many other people, because this stuff, there's such a degree of like caring and compassion and giving and all of this stuff. You know, if you were to have this conversation in normal society, people would, a lot of people would think that that's crazy. Like, how could you possibly, there's no such thing as too much empathy or too much caring or too much compassion or too much giving. That's, I think, a pretty common mindset, but if it's not within the context of, you know, healthy boundaries and standards and all that, then it's dysfunctional. So it can be hard for us to spot it. So yeah, I guess the point is, you know, as we move forward in this, we're going to continue finding traits within ourselves that kind of need some adjustment to get into alignment there. That's a very valid point and a huge aha moment, Lydia. Hey, Lydia says, I learned that I can't love someone unconditionally when it's hurting me. Yes, absolutely. Because loving them can't come at the expense of hurting us. Then it's not love. And again, this is one of these concepts where society tends to view love as this intense feeling that we have. There's a very immature understanding of love that is kind of perpetuated throughout society. It's that feeling of desperation, of clinging, of you know, obsessively thinking about this person. It's really confusing. It's more along the lines of lust, because love, true, like real love, it's action, it's appreciation, it's value, it's respect, it's dignity, it's wanting the best for another person, it's helping them to become their very best, and it's nourishing, but it's a two-way street. There's that sense of mutuality there. It's not we're continuing to always be there for another person while they stomp all over us. That's not love. That's dysfunction and codependence, really. So that understanding, developing a healthier understanding of love is part of the many different lessons in healing. And then, yeah, realizing, you know, I might have these really strong feelings for this person, but if they're treating me terribly, it doesn't matter how I feel. I hear from people all the time, like, well, I'm in this relationship and I can't leave. I love him. or I love her. And the reality is it doesn't matter. You know, we can't be driven into harm's way because we love somebody. That's, and I get it. I've had those strong feelings. I know the pull. I understand that, but there's that, Pia Melody, I think, would call it more of like that healthy adult within us, where we have to just realize we can't be driven off of emotions like this. Like we can't, we can't be around people because we care about them, but it's not returned. They treat us terribly. So yeah, it's a big mindset shift to make, because you look at any movie, romantic comedy, what have you, and they're really selling the whole message that love conquers all, and that everybody can be fixed, and that our love can fix them. And it's just a bunch of garbage, and it keeps people stuck. It's just toxic mentality. Thank you, Missouri Cowboy. He says, this is not pathological giving. This is paying for a safe enough place to heal. Thank you, Dana, and everyone in this chat. It's the best therapy I ever got is here. Well, good deal. I'm glad that we can provide a safe enough place, and I agree. This place is phenomenal. Thank you guys, all of the different moderators in here. And we've got 146 people watching right now. And I am continually impressed and surprised and just happy to see that we've got 146 people, and those that are participating in the chat, I don't want to jinx us, but we so rarely have issues with trolls and problematic people. And I think that just is amazing. That's so rare on the internet, and especially on YouTube and live streams on YouTube. So I just think that's really cool. So thank you guys for being there and for supporting each other. And you just never know. You never know when that little piece of validation or just that compassion for a stranger, especially in the support groups or in chats like this, that it can mean so much to another person. So I love it. It restores my faith in humanity when I see people just being awesome and supporting each other like this. Yes, and Wonder Woman is talking about movies and says, Beauty and the Beast, dumb love story. It's more like a trauma bond. Oh, totally. It's Stockholm syndrome, right? I mean, it's wild when you start seeing this stuff for what it is, and you just realize this is so toxic. And these are the messages that we start indoctrinating children with this stuff. And boys and girls are each taught their own toxic messages with this stuff. And it's amazing that anybody is ever in a healthy relationship or friendship, because the stuff's not taught. And the opposites, not only is the opposite stuff taught, it's heralded as ideal. And it takes us a long time to realize that it's all smoke and mirrors, because it's that instant gratification, because it feels so good, and it addresses all of these vulnerabilities that so many of us have. It's the fantasy, and it's difficult to walk away from that and to see it as to have it lose its appeal, and just realize this isn't real. Like, this isn't real. It's not what I want, because it's not real. Slavic Princess says, if you really need to heal, please listen to Lisa Romano, Inner Child Healing. Yes, she is fantastic. I agree. I'm going to write that down. She's got quite a few books out too. And I don't think we've ever read any of her stuff in book club, and we really should. Add that. We've already got books for 2019. I think we've got all of them for 2019, but I will add that for 2020. Really planning ahead. So, okay, let's see. Oh, well, thank you. Mohammed says, I'm watching you from Paris. I always do. You helped me so much. Thank you. That, thank you for saying that. And I'm really glad. And that's just, you've probably heard me talk about this. I just get so tickled when people from all over the world are here. I just, that is, I don't know why I am so easily amused by that, but I just get the biggest kick out of that. So, um, that's just so cool. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Mora says, I know I have a 3-year-old who is starting to get into the princess thing. And as I'm re-seeing these stories, they're pretty bad. Yeah, it's tough. I don't know if there's any more like balanced stories out there that are more, I don't know, like, I don't know, more empowering. Shrek. I don't know if that's, I guess that's a little bit older, but I thought that was a good one. That was cute. And it was less dysfunctional than other stuff out there. You know, that is a good question. Rob asks, where's the most remote part of the world people have checked in? We had somebody from Egypt once, which that might have been the furthest place we've had so far. So I don't know. It's just the internet is so cool. Just brings people together in ways that we probably never thought possible. Oh, well, Sakito, I'm probably not pronouncing your name right, Sashito, says, I'm actually watching this from Tokyo, and I've been watching this for over 4 years. Oh my gosh. That is so cool. Well, thank you so much for letting me know, and welcome. I was actually watching a video the other day about there was this kind of growing problem in Japan, and I'm probably going to say the word wrong, but it was oh, it started with an H. Like, maybe you know what I'm talking about if I just describe it. Like Hikoto. That's probably not right, but it's about, anyways, the concept was mainly Japanese men who were completely isolating, and they were not able to work. It was almost like they were falling into a deep depression, and that's probably part of it, but they had just checked out. They weren't leaving their house. They weren't taking care of themselves. They were just completely isolating. And there was this program with these women where they would it was almost like in the United States, we have a program called like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, where it's like a platonic thing where somebody else kind of mentors or just kind of spends time with somebody else. And so what they were doing is but except for this program in Japan, this was their job. And so these women were kind of like at home. They would visit these different houses of these men, generally these men's families, because these men were living at home. And their whole goal was to try to get them to become social and to open up and to go outside. And it was so just heartbreaking, and it makes you wonder what on earth is going on that that's causing that. Yes, that's it. Hokomori? Yeah. I'm saying it all wrong. Hokimori. Yes. Interesting. I love these little mini documentaries that are all over the internet about what's going on in the world, because, you know, I guess here in the United States, we're in such a bubble, and you just hear all these different stories. It's just so fascinating and interesting, and just expand your horizons for sure. Yes, that's it. Hikikomori. Yes, Hikikomori. Thank you. Yes. Interesting. Sashiko says, like a hermit. Yes, like hermits. And over time, sometimes it takes, these women were saying that sometimes for these men, it takes up to 2 years before they actually even open the door for them, that they will have to sit outside their bedroom door and just talk to them through the door. And they don't, it's just these men are so shut down. And I don't know if this is also happening to women, but the documentary only showed that men were experiencing this. And there was this huge level of distrust. I would say a lot of symptoms that you would see with depression, but it just kind of comes on out of the blue. And it almost seems to be like an epidemic where this is quite a few men this is going on with. So let's see. Let's see. There was somebody had mentioned about children's books. The Inner Muse says, what about the kids' stories that teach children about personal power rather than being saved? Yes, I agree. I think these are the kind of stories that we should be telling our kids, right? Of letting them know that but I will say, in all fairness, I do think that there has been a movement, especially more with like young adult literature you look at the movies, The Hunger Games, and these kinds of movies that have the heroes are significantly younger, and they're more empowered, and so that's kind of cool. But it would be great to see that with younger kids. When I was a kid, we had a book series called The Value Books. And there was a whole bunch of them. I don't know, like 30 or 40 of them. And each book was on a different value. So like the value of friendship, the value of kindness, the value of loyalty, the value of, you name it. And it was all of these different positive character traits. And the characters in the book were historical figures. So I don't know, like it would have been something that they're kind of known for. So like George, who was it? The Honest Abe, I guess. So like Abraham, I don't, this is terrible. Maybe Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or whoever was known for being really honest, the value of honesty. And they would have that main character as this is how this person was honest. And it kind of had this little story about their life and, very watered down and just specific to that personality trait. But it was good to at least open up that discussion of positive personality traits. Another thing that I thought was really cool, especially as an adult looking back on it, but I think what really helped to teach a lot of this stuff was, if you guys remember the magazine called Highlights, there was a section in there and it was called Goofus and Gallant. And there would be a scenario where, let's say somebody drops, I don't know, money on the ground, right? And they would have what Goofus would do. And Goofus was a little sociopath, and what Gallant would do. And Gallant was solid good guy. So Goofus would pocket the money and not tell anybody, whereas Gallant would say, hey, mister, you just dropped some money. And it was all of these different scenarios and how these two, like a person with no character and a person with good character, would behave. And I remember that was so fascinated by that even as a child, but now as an adult, I think, that kind of stuff is really helpful to to show children, like, these are the different ways that these situations can be handled. And this is what it means to have good character. And this is how people with good character behave and people with bad character behave. So, Dina, that is a challenge for sure. She says, I live in a rural area. I've been isolated many ways from family, from friends. I've been afraid of people. How do you get back into life? Well, your situation might be a little bit different because you probably heard me talking about it earlier. I'm a big fan of meetup.com. These kinds of groups can be a great way to get out there and meet people. If you were in a rural area, there might not be meetup groups going on, but I would start with looking up meetup.com, see if there's any groups in your area that even remotely appeal to you. And if there aren't, then sometimes I guess depending on, it can be helpful to tap into like a spiritual community. So for example, I'm not religious, but I definitely consider myself spiritual. And when I was going through all of this, I had reached out to, we have a local Unitarian church, so it's all denominations, and they had all kinds of things going on there. So, they had a book club, they had a discussion group, they had services, and it was just a nice place to go, and just the kind of the good energy was there. So that might be an option. Sometimes Facebook groups, finding if there's any Facebook groups that are meeting up in your area. A lot of times, each city will have, even if it's small, will have some sort of networking group on Facebook. So you can do a search on Facebook for your city. So, your city, and then type in group and see what comes up. And then that can be a way to start getting out there and meeting people. And just going a little bit at a time to where, in realizing that you can leave at any time. So you're getting out there for a little bit in a way that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't feel like you're going to go into emotional collapse. You're going out for an hour or two to go bowling, and then you're coming home, and just start getting used to kind of reintegrating. Let's see. Oh yes, and Kamami is here, who is also, I believe, also in Paris. Small world. Let's see, let me scroll up. JJ's talking about this channel about alpha stuff, and it says that there's 3 types of men: the pseudo alpha, the nice guy, and then the authentic alpha. And that we are the loser nice guys trying to get to the authentic alpha. I think you could extend that understanding to, I don't like looking at anybody really, especially nice people that have been the victims of abuse, as losers. I don't think that that's the case at all. That a lot of this stuff applies to people. If you look at it not from such a gendered perspective, but from like a universal perspective, you have the pseudo alpha, right? Who that's the over the top, abrasive, brash, arrogant, ridiculous, over the top person, really insecure person, where they've got, you know, they're just always trying to impress. It's just ridiculous. It's a huge turnoff to pretty much everybody but them and other people that are like them. So that's this, in my opinion, the pseudo alpha, male or female. Then you have the quote unquote nice guy or nice girl. These people tend to, you know, their main challenge is that they just don't have a solid sense of self, and they don't have a solid sense of boundaries. And then the authentic alpha or leader, we'll just say leader, male or female, is somebody who is really grounded within themselves and that confidence. And they're so grounded in themselves that they can give other people their space. So it's not this continual, like, trying to one up somebody. It's that they realize, you know, it's the healthy narcissism. Like, I'm okay, you're okay. You know, why not me? Why not you? I'm not threatened by this other person's goals or what they've got going in their life or their wants or their needs or any of this stuff. Like, they can do them, and doesn't threaten me. I think that's more of like that authentic alpha. It's just that deep confidence that comes from being deeply rooted within yourself. But I will say, it is just, and I talk about this a lot, it has been my experience that people that are deeply rooted in themselves are the ones that have gone through hell. Because if you don't, most people grow up in a dysfunctional family. I think that's more common than not. If they don't grow up in a dysfunctional family, they for sure grow up in a dysfunctional society. So it's impossible really to escape the dysfunctional programming that happens. And so most people tend to get into some sort of really traumatic situation because of that. And then that basically brings them to their knees, and their whole world is blown apart. And then they start crawling, trying to find answers. And then they come across, there's some sort of entry point. They start understanding narcissism or sociopathy. They start coming across channels like this, or, you know, channels in the realm of this. And it just opens up this whole world to them of understanding other people, and then the most important thing is understanding themselves, that later part in healing. And then they become reacquainted with who they really are, and they just become deeply rooted within themselves. That's where that comes from. There was a video I was watching the other day, and it was so sad. It was from this guy who, and the title of the video was something like, I'm ugly. And he was Swedish, but the thing is, he wasn't ugly. Like, he was a totally average looking guy. And he was talking about, it was so interesting. So he was talking about how he was so ugly, and he was pointing out everything about him that was ugly, and why no girls liked him. And so that was tragic in its own, to hear somebody be so hard on themselves, especially when it's like, I think we're so much harder on ourselves than other people are on us, you know. To hear him pick apart himself like that was just absolutely heartbreaking. But then what was so wild to me is how many guys there were in the comments that were feeding into this. And they're like, yeah, man, you should really get like a chin implant, and you can start hitting the gym, and you can really bulk up, and, you know, get a different haircut, and fix your teeth, and, you know, do this and that and this and that. And I was just shocked by that. And because at least for me, I think for a lot of women, what is attractive with men we aren't as visual as you guys are. So I think attraction's just very different. What you're talking about, like the pseudo alphas, or the whatever the female version of that would be, are the ones that are attracted to that superficial stuff. But, you know, the big catch is, hey, we're all getting older. So like, that's there's you know, old age will eventually catch up to you. And so there's got to be something deeper there that's beyond, the superficial. But in this guy's mind, he was just never going to be able to get a girlfriend or a girl that treated him well. I guess he'd been in an abusive relationship, it sounded like, with this one girl for about 7 years. And she was just very, very mean and degrading to him. But he really felt like he could not attract anything different because of the way he looked. And he was just kind of cursed genetically to then to kind of wander the earth alone. And it was like, man, personality for women, it makes it or breaks it, seriously. And I guess I was shocked that so many men were so concerned about how they looked and appearance wise and all that. So I don't know. Most women I know, they don't care. Like, they don't care about what your jawline looks like or how much hair you have or how tall you are, or a lot of this stuff it's more of an issue for men than I think it is for women. Oh, that's so sad. Kevin, that's so tragic. He said in his 20s, girls used to tell him all the time he was ugly. He said, I believed them at the time. Yeah, I've met you in person and you are not ugly at all. So that's wild it's wild that anybody would ever say something like that to another person, especially when it's not even close to being true. Like, that's just so weird. Okay, oh, was it the other Kevin? It must have been the other Kevin. He says, you must mean the other Kevin. Yeah, well, now I'm going to have to see your little picture, and here's a wizard. So I don't know. Yeah, Slavic Princess was saying, oh, Dana, I was told by a couple bullies in school that I needed a nose job. My nose is round and a little small. Oh, other Kevin lives in New Zealand. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, yes, we did not meet. Although I would love to go to New Zealand. Yeah, it's funny. It's tragic. The kind of messages that we internalize about appearance. And the reality is most people are attracted to very different things. And I don't know. I think personality goes a lot further than people give it credit for. And he might. Miss Markle says, well, maybe he meant he couldn't get the kind of girls that he wants. That could very well be. I think that tends to be kind of a theme with a lot of the incel, or the guys that identify as being incels, is, I don't know, that's a whole nother interesting, tragic phenomenon that's going on. I think there's a lot of guys that have probably been bullied and that have really low self-esteem, and they've kind of cherry-picked some different scientific facts about men and women, and have really built up this whole belief system that reinforces the fact that they are inferior, and that that these certain types of men, they call Chad or Tyrone, kind of chiseled, pseudo alpha basically looking kind of guy, he gets all the chicks. And if you don't look like him, then you might as well just throw in the towel. And if you have to be at least, I think, 6 feet tall, and you have to be, have this jawline, and you have to, I don't even know what other criteria it is. And it's like, it's sad. It's sad that they think that, because that really, that's not the case. Yeah, Beauty Queen says, yeah, people are obsessed with these chins now from what these groups mention. Yeah, that was a new one for me. I hadn't come across that. Oh, Rachel is here from Gold Coast, Australia. Well, that's quite far away as well. Well, welcome. We have New Zealand and Paris and Japan and Australia here tonight. That's so cool. That's a great question, George. He says, if a person puts hate letters in your mailbox, should you show it to the police or show it to a lawyer? I guess it depends if you already have some sort of case against this person. But it would probably be a good idea to go ahead and file a police report. I guess even if you do have a case against them, just it's further documentation. So, and okay, so real quick, so back to this guy's channel, and anyways, I'd love to comment on there saying, you know, that I'm older than him. So like, just, different. But I had the biggest crush on Gene Wilder. And he is not what you would consider like a traditionally handsome guy, but he is so funny and he's so intelligent, and his personality is just phenomenal. And I just absolutely loved him. I would have taken Gene Wilder any day of the week over anybody else. I just thought he was so cool. So, it's, you don't have to be traditionally handsome there's so many other factors. So, yeah, Rob says, Gene Wilder, love him. Totally understand. Yeah, it was so cool. And Taldanam's talking to George about the letters and says, yes, if there are threats, that is illegal. Yeah, I would take that stuff seriously. It's stupid of them. Good for you that they're leaving a paper trail, but stupid of them. So, yep. And Taldanam says, if a person puts hate letters in your mailbox, at least save them for future reference if needed. I would agree. Absolutely. So let's see. I think we are at that point. Are we getting ready to do our wind down meditation for the night? And real quick, Grace says, I totally get the Gene Wilder attraction. Yeah. I would imagine a lot of women just swooned over him because of who he was, So, okay. With that said, with our little tribute to Gene Wilder, we'll end on that. But let's take some time. We'll do our guided meditation for the end of the evening, and then I'll see you guys next week. So take some time to get comfortable wherever you are, if you're lying down or if you are sitting down, to just settle in, settling into your body and into this moment. Taking a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhaling through your mouth. And again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Turning your attention inward into your body, feeling the heaviness in your arms and legs, feeling your feet if they are touching the ground, or feeling the back of your calves if you're laying down. Noticing the temperature in the room, if it's warm or cool or just right. Noticing any sounds that might be going on around you. Perhaps a fan or the heater or the air conditioning, depending on where you live, kicking on or off. Any cars driving by or trains. Any other sounds that might be going on. And continuing to breathe. Settling into your body. Noticing if there's any areas that you're holding any tension. As you're taking this time to be fully present in your body and in this moment. Now bringing your attention to the top of your forehead. And slowly, easily, and effortlessly relaxing your forehead, your eyebrows, and your eyes. Letting any tension or stress just dissipate. Easily drift away. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw. Allowing your jaw to fall open and your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth. Relaxing your neck and your throat, and your shoulders. And continuing to breathe. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your wrists, your hands and your fingers, allowing your hands to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Feeling the heaviness in your arms. Relaxing the muscles in your chest and in your back. Allowing any tension or stress that you're holding to easily and effortlessly make its way out of your body. And continuing to breathe. Noticing that with each breath, that each breath goes deeper into the very bases of your lungs, allowing your lungs to fully expand and your chest to fill with this wonderful healing oxygen. Now bringing your attention to your stomach. Relaxing your stomach. Relaxing any or releasing any tension or stress that you might be holding. Relaxing your hips and your thighs, your knees and your calves, your feet and your toes, allowing them to easily and effortlessly fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Really feeling the full weight of your body as you are completely relaxed. Relaxing into your body, into this moment, and acknowledging that this is your time and that in this moment you are safe, you are here, you are not alone, that it's okay to be fully present in your body and in this moment. Taking your attention and turning it inward until you can feel your heart beating. Let's just take a moment to have some gratitude and amazement, really, at what an amazing gift it is to have a body and all of these different functions that our bodies do every single moment of every single day, so many of which we don't even have to think about or plan for or have to earn, that these things just happen. It's just part of being alive. There's all of this amazingness going on inside of you. Taking the time now to just thank your body for all that it does, that your heart beats and your red blood cells carry oxygen, that your cells regenerate. Every single part of your body is hard at work, helping you to stay healthy and to be the best you possible. Now let's bring your attention back to the middle of your chest and visualize a small light. Perhaps it's the size of a candlelight that's in your chest, kind of inner flame, this inner glow, this inner light that we all have. With each breath, having that light grow bigger and brighter, to the size of a golf ball, a softball, a basketball. Feeling the warmth and the healing energy of that light as it continues to easily and effortlessly make its way up your torso and down your arms, up your neck, into your head, down your legs, into your toes, filling your body with all of this amazing, healing, restorative white light. Let's take a moment and visualize sending out kind of cords of that white light to perhaps other people in the chat tonight or other people in your everyday life or anywhere that feels like you'd like to send out some good energy. Taking some time to connect to all of that. taking time to be a part of everything that is good and right, that is healing and restorative. Let's do that for the next 7 breaths. Sending out light and love. And as you come back, taking time to give yourself a really big, energetic hug, acknowledging how far you've come, how strong you are, how wise you have become, and acknowledging that you are a warrior. You have gone through so much, and that you can do this, that you are doing this, and that you are now on a wonderful journey of self-discovery, and that you have value, and that you matter, and that there are so many things that are right about you. There truly, truly are. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I hope to see you next week. So 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we do these. And have a wonderful week, and take care. And as always, lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Good night.